Well, good morning. We'll go ahead and get started, and people will join us as they get here and grab some coffee. I got to meet a lot of you before we got started, so that's always helpful for me. If you have particular questions, feel free to stop me along the way. You know, it's easier for me if we have a conversation, make sure you get what you want, what you need from this process. So I'm Leah Jackman-Wheitner, and most people are curious how I got started working with lawyers and why I would want to do that. So here's the thing. The one place I was not going to go to undergrad was Mizzou. That's where I went. The one place I was not going to go to graduate school was Ohio State. That's where I went. So when I was in the middle of this networking breakfast and this guy says, well, you ought to work with lawyers because they're miserable and they need you, I said, no. And I should have known because obviously, apparently, whatever I am very certain I'm not going to do, I might end up doing. So I live in southern Indiana in the hometown of Governor Mike Pence, Columbus, Indiana, which is a nice place to live. And it's really nice to be back here. I don't think I've been back to St. Louis since maybe about 5 years. I grew up in Alton 4 to 13, and I was in St. Peter's 13 to 20, and then Mizzou was a year at them, so it was a good time. So I'm excited to be here today with you all. So this friend says, you should work with lawyers. And I said, no, right? I said, no, because lawyers are smart. They're way smarter than me. They're intimidating. I have nothing that I can do or say that would be helpful. No. 45 minutes later, I thought, well, I need to help them. If I can do anything, I thought, well, that was a really fast turnaround from my adamant stance. And here's one of the things that really shifted my thinking. I have a Ph.D. in psychology. I did therapy for a lot of years and got incredibly burned out. Chiropractor 2 or 3 times a week, massage therapist every week or every other week, headaches that would not go away, meds. I finally had an MRI to make sure I didn't have a brain tumor or anything because nothing was kicking these headaches. It was insane. And the problem was I'd gone from doing about a third kids, a third adolescents, a third adults in my practice to doing about 70% kids by the end of it, and most of those were foster kids. Because I was good at foster kids, you know, they give you more foster kids because most people don't want to see them, right? Most people aren't that great. So I had taken on over time this practice that ended up literally creating an incredible amount of physical pain for me. And I thought, I got to get out. I just can't do this anymore. And so to make this hard turn from this thing that I always wanted to do and saying, I don't think I can do it. I don't think I can take this. I can't take the stress of it anymore. I can't take the way that it's affecting me. I feel like that's what a whole lot of lawyers are in the middle of, where people around you may or may not have any idea what's going on. They may or may not have any idea how bad it is. You know, you've heard those statistics. There was one study out of North Carolina several years ago, before the economic downturn, and they said that 10% of lawyers had had suicidal thoughts in the previous month. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, and I would suggest to you that it's the practice of law actually creates some of these problems, and so we got to do everything we can to make it better, because there are too many drastically unhappy people struggling and doing a great job and serving their clients and value what they do, but we got to make it better. So that's why I'm here. And I would suggest to you that typical stress management is necessary but not sufficient. If you take traditional stress management, people are going to tell you, you know, sleep enough, eat right, get some exercise. Okay, if you're in the middle of a trial, how much sleep are you actually getting? A few hours if you're lucky. I've known folks who, by the end of a 2-week trial, have to wear suspenders because they've lost weight, because they can't sleep, can't eat, can't anything. I mean, that's, okay, so traditional stress management, oh, just get some more rest. Well, you know, you and I both know this is not realistic for a lot of folks. Anybody here do the 24 to 36 hours writing at a time kind of thing? You know what I'm talking about? I've got clients who, once they get in the groove, they don't want to risk getting out of the groove, and so they'll just stay. Well, you got to stand up at some point so that your blood doesn't just pool in your ankles. When you have to remind people to get up and stretch, you know that traditional stress management is not going to be sufficient. I would tell you that it doesn't solve the root problem. And the root problem is, what is it that's going on in terms of where the stresses affect people so that we can make sure that we use the natural skills that you have to create the solutions. So analytical people need analytical solutions. And if you don't understand the actual problems lawyers face, you do lawyers a disservice. Because if you just say, oh, well, you have to realize that this problem isn't the be-all, end-all of the entire world. Just get some perspective, right? I mean, that's patronizing at best. Yes, there is a matter of perspective. And if you're in the middle of a stress, you don't want to be told, oh, just take a walk, get some fresh air. It'll all be better. Because it's not going to just all go away if you get some fresh air. So I would say, if you live in your head, let's use that knowledge to make things better and use your natural style and way of thinking to improve things. So when you went to law school, you learn to think differently, right? There are some folks who are built for law, and everybody's told you always, that you argue, you should be a lawyer, blah, blah. But you still had to learn to think in a different way. You had to learn to argue both sides much more thoroughly. You had to learn to slice and dice information. You had to learn that incisive process. And you had to learn that IRAC formula, right? So, as you know, cases are won and lost not on the conclusion, but on the analysis. So what I want to tell you is a whole lot about analysis so that you can use that process on yourself rather than just trying to put a Band-Aid on a situation. Sometimes it's just a different perspective in knowing yourself. I had this client who, when I met him, was ready to chuck it all and go drive a semi. He couldn't stand it, couldn't take it. He had been big firm, straight out of law school, recruited heavily, and he was recruited to do litigation, and that's how he saw himself. And by the time I met him, he's ready to chuck it all, can't stand it. Anytime the phone rings, he jumps. Anybody have that happen? The phone rings or the BlackBerry buzzes or whatever, you get an email, oh my God, what's wrong? And we're having a session one day, and he says this story, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh. So this whole pit bull thing was a learned style rather than who he naturally was, because he was actually an incredibly compassionate person. And so trying to force himself to do litigation was actually the problem. So for him, it was a matter of, let's get out of litigation and let's rethink. But once he said, oh, okay, so no wonder this is not working because it's pushing me to be too far from what my natural style is, then the pressure decreased, like his internalized the pressure he put on himself decreased, and then that increases his ability to create new solutions, to create a new approach to life. Follow? So it's not like, oh, well, all right, you don't like litigation, just don't do that anymore. It's, okay, well, here's why it does and doesn't fit. Here are the ways that it works and doesn't work for you. And then here's what you could do instead. You got to let people have their own solutions rather than just tell them, okay, we'll do this instead. Because that's not going to solve it, right? You have to give people a different way to see themselves so that then they can act and feel and create a new reality. So I would say that really what I do is help people to have big changes in their mindset about who they are, what they do, small changes in their actual activities and the actions in their lives, and then that's what creates big results. And you can use all those negatives to create the positives. So here's what I think is important. We know that lawyers are disproportionately hit with stress, right? Well, the question is why, and how can we use that information to improve things? So you've heard this, you've heard all the statistics, right? You know, well, I'm going to skip ahead. You know all the statistics. 25% of lawyers have anxiety, essentially anxiety attacks 3 times a month for the previous 12 months. Lawyers have 3 times the rate of depression. That suicide we talked about, the suicidal ideation stuff. Suicide rate is first or second, depending on which study. And almost twice the rate of alcoholism. There's a reason they call it the bar, right? So I would suggest to you that knowledge is power, and that if you know that this is what the situation is, if you know that we're going to be hit by depression, anxiety, alcoholism, and OCD. The OCD one is the most fascinating to me. Lawyers have 10 times the rate of OCD as the general public. General public is 1.4% to 2.1%, and male lawyers are at, I think it's, well, I can't, now I'm going to flip it around in my head. Female lawyers are at 14%, male lawyers are 21%. 10 times the rate of the general public. I think we can use that as this kind of like giant, horrible cloud over our heads, or we can say, all right, let's take it and make it, number one, when you've got those things happening, go, oh, all right, well, here's what's happening. This is a normal thing for us. Okay, well, here we are. It's just the way it is. It decreases the power if you don't feel like it's a personal thing. It's just sort of like, oh, well, here, it's an occupational hazard. I've got to work harder to address it, to mitigate potential risk. But of course it's going to happen. And of course I'm going to be faced with these stresses. That's just the way it goes. If you think like that, then it gets you out of the cycle of self-blame and into a cycle where you could actually do something productive for yourself. Does this make sense? And that's not how most people think of it. There's actually another, my favorite fun statistic in life, 69% of marital arguments are not solvable. That sounds terribly depressing. 69% of marital arguments are not solvable. It sounds depressing until you rethink it. If you think of it as, oh my gosh, what are we doing here? Then it's horrible, right? If you think of it as, all right, we solve the 31% that we can, and the rest of the time we just have to know this is the issue we're going to continue to face. We have to stay standing side by side looking at the issue together and go, oh, here we are again looking at the in-laws. Here we are again looking at the money. Here we are again looking at the kid issue, whatever that issue is. If you see it as this is just the dance we're going to do, rather than getting polarized, then it actually makes life better because you no longer blame yourself or your spouse for not having solved it. I think it's the same deal when you're talking about these statistics about all the challenges that lawyers face. Like, okay, here we are again. Here's an opportunity for the depression to crop up. So how am I going to handle that? What am I going to do? Oh, hello, depression, you're showing up. All right. It takes down the emotional pressure and you don't feel like a failure for having not solved it. You go, oh, all right, this is the way it is. This is what we do next. It normalizes it and you don't feel like, fundamentally, you don't feel like a failure in the same way. And it's weird to talk about, right? I mean, you are people who are driven by success. You're counting your wins in your mind, so to think and go, yeah, there are those days where I feel like a failure. I question what I'm doing or I question why I'm here. It's difficult to talk about, but once you realize that that's okay and that's just part of the deal and it's part of the challenge that you're going to face, then it gets much easier. So, here's why lawyers face more stress than the general public. Because the factors that make you a good lawyer make you an unhappy human being. Pessimism, perfection, and a little paranoia. You cannot practice law unless you're always looking for potential negative outcomes. You're always mitigating against risk. You're writing a contract, you're thinking about what's going to happen 150 years from now. John and I were talking about, well, whose grandchild or great-grandchild is going to do what in 150 years based on this family-owned business. right? You have to think long-term about potential downside, potential problems that no one else even stops to think about. The regular public does not stop to think in this way, right? One time I was doing the first time I did this program, I was in a small county, and the carpet got a little lump in it. So then there was this giant discussion between 2 or 3 of the folks about, the trip hazard and who was really, is it an issue that the chamber who was hosting this event needed to work on, or is it something was it a landlord? Whose issue is it? And this is not how most people spend their mornings. This is not how most people spend a Saturday afternoon or a Saturday evening going out to a bar and then looking around at, the chords and what do they do with that? Well, what are they thinking? Well, this is overcrowded. This is not right. It's not going to be good. This is not how most people think, right? Y'all are different. You approach life in a different way. Let's use that. So if we know that you tend to be pessimistic because you're looking for the potential negatives, you have to be perfectionistic because, as we know, patent cases are won or lost on the placement of comma. Millions of dollars are about whether this is a subordinate clause or not. Is there a comma there or not? Tell me you can be a lawyer without being a little perfectionistic. You can't. You just can't. And you've got to be on your guard all the time, right? Which makes you tend to be a little paranoid about the world around you. You're always looking for what could go wrong. You're thinking about what might not work. Let's use those, flip them around a little bit, and make them work for you. Oh, the other thing, you're also analytical and smart. You can't get through law school unless you're pretty smart. Real smart, usually. Combine that intelligence and that analysis with the pessimism, the perfectionism, and the suspiciousness, and you're going to be just fraught with existential angst. What's the point of it anyway? What's good in the world anyway? I mean, I've got clients who will lay awake in the middle of the night and they're worried about the downfall of civilization. The general public is not worried like that. There are some people who think like that, but not everybody, not most people, but lots and lots of lawyers, because you're thinking at that level and your brain is always going. Does it ever turn off? Anybody good at turning off their brain and just go and play golf or chilling, nothing? All right, good. A couple of head nods. By and large, not most lawyers. All right. Look at it. Keys to stress management. Let's talk about this 1 in 10,000. So if you are, let's see if I can make this other microphone work. Sorry about that. Oh, hey, there you go. If you are at home and your spouse says, hey, you want to go camping this weekend? What's your immediate process? I immediately see 10 options in front of me. Oh, let's just say pretend you like camping. Okay. Pretend camping was even on the table at all. You've got 10 options. You can see 10 options. Each of those roads has 10 possibilities. Each of those roads has 10 possibilities. Pretty soon you're looking at 10,000 options, and immediately you're standing out and saying, the Black River, they flooded last week and we can't go there. So your spouse says, hey, you want to go camping, next weekend, following weekend? And an average lawyer response might be, well, the Black River flooded. Can't go there. It's not, I don't want to go camping. It's, there is a potential danger lurking way down here at the end of one of these 10,000 paths I can see. And what I would suggest to you is if you say, oh, camping sounds nice. If we were to go camping, let's not go there. Because that didn't, they've got a flood going on. That's how normal people interact. Oh, that sounds nice. Here's a potential risk I see. But a lawyer, and especially lawyers talking to each other, well, we can't go there. Oh, okay. They know, a lawyer to a lawyer knows that doesn't mean I'm shutting down your idea. I'm just telling you, well, here is potential downfall, and we can't do that one, right? But for the regular folks who are going to tell you, why are you always so negative? Why can't you just, relax? It's because you immediately, with faced with any question, see the 1 in 10,000 negative option. So I would suggest to you that if you can see the 1 in 10,000 negative possibility, look for the 1 in 10,000 positive option, or positive potential outcome. I don't mean that you're going to become Pollyannish. This is not, oh, let's just see all the sunshine and roses and everything's going to be great. It's not that. It's just simply, let's look for the fact that something might go well. Wouldn't that be nice? Because how often during your day are you actually seeing what could go well? Anybody really good at that? Anybody seeing the happy? Anybody's life and their practice just full of joy, like, I don't know, you're always doing like adoption finalizations and never anything bad. Try to think of what kind of area. Sometimes you get a happy client because they're getting a new baby, or they had a baby and they're doing well, but still they're going to be freaked out because now I got to think about will things. They got to have tough conversations. There's almost no area of the law that's happy, right? So you have to make your own enjoyment in the process because it's not going to come there naturally. So look for that 1 in 10,000 positive possibility. And I want you to track your accomplishments. How often do you go through the day and you think, you're going through, and you feel like at the end of the day, I got nothing done. Yeah? Because you came in and you knew that you had these things to work on, and then the phone rang, or then the email came, or then someone knocked on your door and said, so-and-so's here and you've got to see him right now, and you get completely derailed from your plan. What you want to do is track what you've done, not just your to-dos. So if you actually literally write down, if you start even keeping hash marks, and you might suggest this to your staff, when you've given your staff a list of things that need done, and they feel like they're not getting anything done at the end of the day, if you have them keep just little hash marks of how many phone calls they fielded, or how many people came through the door, or how many emails they had to respond to, they end up feeling more productive. You'll end up feeling more productive. All right, didn't get to these things, but I did accomplish these things instead. If you look at what you accomplished rather than what you didn't accomplish, you end up feeling better. Those things that you didn't accomplish still need done, of course. It's not like they go away, but they don't weigh on you in the same sense of, I didn't do anything, because you see what it is you did. So keep a done list. Look for the positive potential things, and you want to get a sense of mental control. One of the things that we talk about in psychology is a thing called locus of control, and whether you feel in charge of your life or whether you feel that life is essentially happening to you. So are you internal locus of control or external locus of control? And when you are practicing law, you're busy responding to external circumstances, right? And anything from opposing counsel to your own client to the judge can derail your plan, and it's frequent and reasonable to feel like you've got no control in the situation. So what I would suggest to you is you start looking for those places where, even though you have no choice, and it's not like anybody asked your, oh hey, maybe I'm just too far away from this, sorry. It's not like anybody asked your opinion about changing the court date, but if you say, oh, I'm going to change the court date on this. I just got a letter, I'm going to change the court date on my calendar. I'm going to do it rather than I have to do it. You start feeling differently because you feel like you were the one who made the choice about doing it. Even though you didn't have a choice about when the new court date is, you didn't have a choice about whether you were going to get that letter. But if you look at it and say, oh yeah, well, hey, I just got this notice, I'm going to do this. If that's just a subtle dialogue in the back of your mind, you end up feeling differently. You end up feeling more in control, even if it didn't actually change anything in the tangible reality. This is what I'm saying about, it's just like the IRAC process. It's about the analysis that you're doing, and it's about the process in the back of your head, not about the task. The task remained the same. I got to change my calendar. The process in the back of your head becomes, I'm in control of my life, rather than, oh my God, here we go again. Does this make sense? You follow me? All right. So it's a different way to approach stress management. Give it a shot. It may not sound like it makes any sense right now, and this is why I actually like lawyers, is because you guys are like me. I don't want to be told just do something. I got to understand why. And so anything that I suggest to you to do, I could tell you 15 minutes worth of information about why this is going to work, dissect it, slice and dice it, show you all the different angles that you can use to make it work. And then you can decide which one of those makes sense for you and how you think and how you approach life. Because frequently, people call me when they're sick of their job and they want to change jobs. Most of my clients never change jobs, they just change how they're feeling. I had this woman come in, she had migraines 4 to 5 days a week, like debilitating migraines, 4 to 5 days a week. And we had our first session, she comes back for the second session 2 weeks later, and she starts telling me how she's doing, and she's had 2 or 3 headaches that were like, not migraines, and responded to Motrin. And I'm like, well, what's that? That's huge, right? That's a massive amount of progress. And she said, well, I had hope. I'm like, what? She's like, well, we talked, and I got the hope that I was going to feel better. And I thought, really? Like, 60 minutes gave you hope and like that much decreased on your stress level? Here's the challenge for lawyers, is it's difficult to hope, right? You can know you've got a slam dunk case, doesn't mean you're going to win it. You can know that everything is on your side, doesn't mean you're going to win. So why would you want to hope? I could tell you that you may not hope about the outcome of a case, but if you reinvigorate your own thinking to where it's okay to hope for your own life, to have the pressure be just a little less, then things start to get better and they snowball in the right direction instead of the wrong direction. Okay. I'm getting annoyed with this microphone because I feel weird. We're going to go back to standing still. Seems like there was something else I wanted to say about hope. Yeah, I'll come back to it. Okay. So, think like a civilian. I'm on Facebook. I got a lot of lawyer friends on Facebook. This guy posts, a lawyer out east somewhere posts and says, okay, I've got a question for all the lawyers who I'm friends with. Are you friends with non-lawyers or are you only friends with lawyers? And one of the 50 some odd responses he got was, I am only friends with lawyers, I cannot stand civilians. And I thought, that is so telling, right? I mean, because if you think about it, who are easy people to talk to? People who get that you're going to immediately spot that 1 in 10,000 negative, and boom, and we're going to go there and stay there. Those are the people that it's easy to be around. And even people who are very friendly and very warm, kind people are not going to have most of their intellectual discussions with non-lawyers, because non-lawyers are going to get irritated and annoyed at the way you approach it. You may agree with them on who you want to vote for president, but they got there the wrong way, and you want to make sure they understand the error of their ways. Or they may be failing to take into account this particular situation. They may be failing to take into account this particular bias of this media outlet that they're looking. And they're relying too much on this one outlet, and here's their bias, and let's talk about this, even though you completely agree with, the fundamentals of their conclusion that that you want the same person to be elected. So you want to practice thinking like a civilian, or at least remind yourself when it is you're thinking like a civilian and when you're thinking like a lawyer. And remind yourself, okay, I need to go, and think of it almost like a cross-cultural experience. Let's go to civilian land. Let's go hang out with the civilians for a little while. And frankly, the reality is, civilian is an incredibly powerful word here because it implies the battle. It implies the battle that you live in all the time. Your lives are a battle. You may have just as much on the stakes may be just as high as a surgeon, right? But there is no opposing team of surgeons across the room in an operating room waiting to take down that surgeon's work. So for a lawyer, you're always in a battle because you can be doing your great work. You're doing great work, and you know that out there somewhere is either currently or potentially later someone ready to take down your work. And then some external person that you may or may not have any control over, or over the choice of, not over the person, because of course you don't have that, waiting to tell you whether you were right or wrong. That's a battlefield sort of life. And if you remind yourself, oh, okay, well, that's where we are. We live in a little battlefield. This is the thing we chose. This is the process. It's one great psychodrama that, creates people's sense of justice. It's something that the world needs. But yeah, it feels like a battle because it is. Then it decreases the pressure. But you remind yourself when you leave your office or when you set down your phone at night, oh, I want to act like a civilian now. Let's look for something that's going well. Let's look for something good in life. Okay? And it takes deliberate practice because it's not where your brain is naturally going to go. Since I had this whole color scheme going, I couldn't write yellow in the word yellow. So this is not one of those games about, which way do you read it best. What I'd like you to do is take a good look around the room. Take in every detail you can. And then either close your eyes or look down for a moment. And I want you to think about how much of the color red you saw. And then look around the room again and look for the color red. Pardon? Yeah. I usually choose yellow. There's not a whole lot of yellow today. So I thought about green, then there wasn't enough green. I went with red. I know what color I'm going to choose, and I always notice more the second time. I see your pop now. I see your the QT on your side of your thing. I see the writing on the recycling. I know what color I'm going to choose, and I always see more the second time. You see more red the second time through? Did the amount of red in the room change? No. So all the woo-woo people who are like, okay, let's focus on the positive and it will draw more to us. Okay, maybe, whatever, maybe, who knows. But from a very practical standpoint, the reality is you notice things that you're looking for. So if you're going through life looking for bad things, you're going to find them. If you're going through life looking for some good things sometimes, you'll start to find them. I'm looking at the red on your, is that a napkin or something? Red on the napkin. Red on the napkin, all right. See, so, how many times have I stared around the room and now I'm just starting to notice more. It's not that the red is changing, it's that I'm now paying attention to it. And the red in this room is far less than 5%, but now it's evident to us because we're looking for it. So if I can give you one simple tip that would start to change your thinking and your stress level is, if you go through life looking for good things, you will start to feel better. You'll start to have an entirely different reaction, an entirely different experience of life. Simple. Just look for the yellow, look for the red, look for the green, whatever that is. Look for the thing that's going well. Because you're going to be inundated by things that are going poorly, right? It's not like you're going to have to look for those. Those are going to be out there. Look for the one or two things that are going well. And the reality is that in most people's lives, even when you're having just a horrible time of life, usually 60 to 70% of life is okay. I've got a good house, I got a job, I got a place to live, I got family or friends or people who love me. But that 5% or that 1% becomes overpowering, overwhelming, and takes up our entire focus. There's a meme going around Facebook right now that says, was it really a bad day or was it bad 5 minutes that you milked all day? And I'm like, oh, I'm so guilty of that. Okay, so everything I tell you are things that I've had to deliberately practice doing. I am not naturally an optimistic person. I have trained myself to be optimistic. I have trained myself to look like a flexible person. People who meet me think that I'm very easy and go with the flow. I'm like, oh my gosh, you don't live with me. So you can train yourself to look for the positive things in life, which then starts to change your experience of other things, and then you start to have different conversations. If you went through the next 2 weeks looking for a few positive experiences, a few things that went well, and you spent your time mentioning those to your best friend, your spouse, your kids, your parents, whoever it is you hang out with, how does that shift the dynamic of your relationship? How does that shift the dynamic of what goes on inside your thought? How does it shift your commute? If you're no longer looking for the jerk who cut you off, but you're looking for the polite person who let you in, you know? If you make that the focus, do you ever do this? You get a nice, good experience at Walmart, Target, wherever, and then you think, well, that was a nice surprise. I will actually call the manager over. Something simple, something tiny, like I saw the cashier be kind to the person in front of me. I will call the manager. I'll say, would you mind calling the manager up? And then they freak out and think that I'm going to go off or something. I'm like, no, I just want to give them some good, the managers come up and they're like braced for impact. And I say, I just want to let you know, I really appreciate her service today. And, she was kind to this person in front of us who was having a rough day. They don't get those messages. How often do you say thank you to your staff? My dad was a VP of Presbyterian Children's Services. I don't know if you're familiar with it. They run 5 children's homes in the Missouri, Kansas City area. And he would always tell his secretaries, thanks for typing a letter. And she would say, it's my job. And he's like, yeah, but I appreciate it because you did it. I don't have to do it. And she'd just stare at him, How often do you say thank you to people? Let's think, it's basic conditioning, right? You get more, you want a more pleasant reaction from your staff. How are you behaving towards them? Are you saying thank you? Are you asking for something rather than just telling them? Simple things. It ends up making this very big difference, and it can change one person taking the time to say thank you, taking the time to say, hey, would you mind? I know you've got a lot of things you're doing right now. I know, or coming over and saying, I know this is going to throw off your day, but this just came in. Being conscious and respectful of the fact that you just threw off their day, even though your day just got thrown off before that. Well, how does that build a culture of respect and of appreciation in each other? And then, is that person going to show up to work? Are you going to have more longevity? Are you going to have better staff-to-staff interaction? Of course you are. People forget to be civil. I think it's just like any long-term relationship, right? There was before the Atlanta Olympics, there was a video, maybe this is just a common phrase in the South that I've never heard. This woman who ran a bed and breakfast in Atlanta was on one of those public interest spiels on TV, and she said, well, down here we treat our company like family and our family like company. And I thought, that is so smart. Treat our family like company and our company like family. I'm good at treating my company like family because I'll say, I'm going to remember to ask you if you want a drink the first time you're here, and then after that, I just tell me if you're thirsty because I'm going to forget to offer. You make yourself at home. But do I remember to treat my family or my coworkers or maybe my best friends I treat well. Do I remember to treat my family and my staff like company with that kindness? No, we show the people that we love the most the worst sides of ourselves. So if you get out of that habit and get back in the habit of showing them the nice part of you or being polite in a way that you would if you just met them, then it starts to shift the tone. And then you start to feel better about your day, and then it decreases your stress, and then you've got more people who are willing to go the extra mile, people who want to go the extra mile, not just do it because it's their job and responsibility. Follow? Okay, so spend your life looking for the yellow. Ooh, I'm going to pass these out real quick. I'm always interested in what people learn, what was useful in what I said, what makes you think. So I'm going to pass these out for that. And also, if you're interested, I have an ebook I wrote called Practicing Law Doesn't Have to Suck. So if you would like a free copy of that, I could email it to you. So simple things you can do in less than 5 minutes to feel better, to be less stressed. Make a list of things you enjoy. Doesn't mean you have to do it. This is not like, oh, make a bucket list and start crossing them off. I just mean go through life thinking about what you like. You know, isn't it nice when I get to work with so-and-so as opposing counsel, because I know they're going to be civil and respectful, and they're not going to drop something on my plate, 6 hours before I go out of town. They're not going to be unkind just for the sake of being unkind. Isn't that nice? I like working with that person. If you just ponder through your day, these are the things I like. Oh, hey, this went well. Oh, hey, isn't it nice that I thought that I was going to need 2 hours to write this brief or finalize this brief, and it only took me an hour and a half. Oh, isn't that nice? If you go through life just thinking about the things that went well and then the things that you enjoy. You're driving, okay, so it's St. Louis. Almost everybody has a commute. Whose commute is less than 15 minutes? Well, that's awesome. Okay, and whose commute is more than 45? 30? 30-ish? 30 range? Okay. All right. So if you go through time while you're driving to work or while you're walking down the hall, if your office is down the hall, and think about, what would be really nice today? Wouldn't it be really nice today if I had a couple calls from great people and I got to connect with people? Or you're driving down the highway and you're like, let's look at, the trees. Or isn't it nice that they just rehabbed this building? Just pay attention to the positive things happening in your environment. Look for the billboards that are interesting, that remind you of something good happening locally. Once you start you trained your mind to look for problems. Now let's train your mind when you don't need to be to look for good things. It takes deliberate practice, but it's so worth it. So worth it. One of my favorite things is when lawyers come in and say, I realized this week there are a lot of good lawyers out there. I don't even hate lawyers anymore. That's like when I know I did my job, right? When people get to the point where they can see and appreciate the good work that other people do, when they can see a lawyer sign and not have an immediate gut reaction of like, you know how they are, even though that's who we are, right? It's like, what's the internal push-pull when you feel negative about the profession to which you belong? Well, let's get out of that and think about the positive things. This opposing counsel, they raked my client over the coals, but it was fair. The questions they asked were fair and not things that were setting out to destroy that person as a human being. I respect that. That's good practice. If you look for those positive things, no matter how small the positive might seem to be, then it puts you on the right path to where you're thinking differently overall. The next thing you want to do is breathe. So take a moment and think about, how do you normally breathe? Are you breathing like here up? Are you breathing here? Are you breathing like real, stand up, throw your shoulders back, actually take a good deep breath? We always forget to breathe, especially if the more you live in your head, the more you kind of just tend to do, and the more you work on a computer, you tend to live here. So take a moment and breathe and say, all right, here we are. We accomplished some good things today. Appreciate those things. And I can go weeks where I don't touch any living plant. Anybody else here? You drive into the garage, you go into the house, you drive to work, you walk from the parking lot inside. You never touch a living thing other than the people in your life or your pets. I would suggest to you that if you touch a leaf or reach down, touch a blade of grass, reach down, touch a bush, whatever, it reminds you that you're part of a grander scheme. And it sounds very strange as an idea, but I think it's worth it. It's really worth it to deliberately do that, because it reminds you, yes, what I'm facing is huge and challenging, and it is not the be-all, end-all, because life goes on around me. It's so easy when clients are relying on you and your family's relying on you and everyone needs you and you're pulled in 1,000 directions to feel like there's nothing you can focus on outside of yourself other than taking care of other people, right? So if you can stretch yourself and go, all right, here's the great big world. As you're driving on your commute, enjoy the sunset, enjoy the sunrise, enjoy the clouds. Not just, oh, there's the clouds. But, oh, aren't the clouds pretty today? And ponder that for a moment. Then it starts to put perspective back in a natural, gentle way rather than a huge, stressful kind of experience. And then you let yourself feel good for a moment. How often after a small win do you go, okay, well, that was good, and then you go on to the next thing without even, okay, we won that, well, or, you call the client, email the client, hey, we took care of this, but you don't ever take time to stop and go, yeah, good for us. Good for me. Got that done. We won one today. Take even 5 seconds and give yourself credit for what you've accomplished. We get so in this habit, especially lawyers, you're on to the next thing, you're thinking about 5 or 10 more things that need done. No wonder you procrastinate, right? Because if you get something done early, then you just feel obligated to start in on the next thing. Anybody do that? Yeah. If you get done with something early, take 3 to 5 minutes and appreciate the fact that you got done with it early. Because otherwise you have no motivation to get anything else done early ever again. I've always had this contention that one of the secondary gains, there's huge physiological issues why it's hard for people to quit smoking, but one of the huge secondary gains is that people who smoke get to take a break. They get to go outside, take a minute, stand with their friends, and get perspective, take a moment, regroup, have some camaraderie, have some time with people. If you don't smoke, why wouldn't you just give yourself that time? Build that into your life. Take a moment. Appreciate what you're doing. Appreciate, okay, I got that done. Let's go on. Let's do this next thing. So, let yourself feel good. And I would suggest to you that it is okay to hope. It is okay to hope. You don't have to be Pollyanna-ish. It's not, oh, everything's going to be great from now on. It's just simple. Things could get a little better. Now, I would suggest to you they can get a lot better, but minimally, things can get a little better. It doesn't have to be this rough all the time. And if you open your mind to that, then things start to build. And sometimes it's just about a little bit of focus that gets you started making the progress that you want so that life becomes much, much happier, much more pleasant, improves your relationships, and, keeps you going for longer in the career as long as you want to be there. So, oh, hey, look at that, right at 9:20. Questions, comments, anything I can do for you? Anything that wasn't clear? All right. Thank you. And pass those up. I'd love to know what you learned. If you don't want to put your name on it, that's fine. If you want a copy of the ebook, shoot me your email or hand me a card. Thanks so much for your time, and I appreciate you being here.